You're with Julian on the Brown Notes, and is Brittany Higgins a silly little girl? Now, I've been waiting for her to be demonised by the viler side of the right in Australia. They are one of the most predictable forces in the universe. And I was quite surprised that Brittany Higgins was allowed to be a hero for so long without them riling up and turning around and saying, actually, we're going to blame you. You're basically, I mean, it's like they've got this gut instinct when it comes to any issue, and she's a woman and she's got an opinion. That's two massive no's. And she's blaming men on the right, which is another massive no. She fits these little boxes where she has to be a feminazi or the enemy. And I was quite surprised that she's lasted as long as she had. But I think that tipping point has turned, and she has now been, you know, it's like when people tell jokes about really, really dodgy subjects. It's like the first person does it and they might get all the stick, but then it's okay for you to do it. So I bet you see a lot more stick. Now, this is all down to veteran Adelaide radio presenter Jeremy Cordo, sacked on the weekend. He's refused to retract comments he made about alleged rape victim Brittany Higgins, and has said that he thought his sacking was an early April Fool's joke. 5AA, the station that he was on, and he was on radio since 1976 and does like old angry man talking head radio. 5AA breakfast host David Penberthy announced on Monday, just gone, that Cordo's employment had been terminated after his weekend program where he called Miss Higgins a silly little girl who got drunk. Now, it wasn't like, so now we've had people saying, he's telling it like it is. One of the most overused phrases in modern history is he's telling it like it is. As Anthony Bourdain pointed out to a Trump supporter, I'm not sure he's telling it like it is. I think he says really offensive things. And that's pretty much what they mean, isn't it? And the fact that someone says they're telling it like it is when they're normally lying or normally wrong, it's not telling it like it is. But the rest of what he did, some of the other things he said, why are we going through these machinations about this young woman? She should have her bottom smacked for being raped at work. On Saturday, Cordo, 75-year-old, said Prime Minister Scott Morrison should have publicly repudiated her story. I'm not sure that Scott Morrison's in the market for your advice at the moment. Things aren't going very well. I just asked myself why the Prime Minister doesn't call it out for what it is, a silly little girl who got drunk. If this girl has been raped, why hasn't the guy who raped her been arrested? Apparently everyone knows his name. It's always good to research these things before you speak, mate. He's now said his comments were perfectly true. He might agree with his comments. I don't know how they're actually true. He didn't agree that he was victim blaming. I'm saying each and every one of us has the inalienable responsibility to take charge of someone's life. Don't put yourself in that jeopardy. I would say to her, would I be right in saying that I feel you'll never be that silly again? Have you learned your lesson? Now, there is a very offensive methodology towards drunk girls getting raped that the right likes to wheel out, which absolves guys of all responsibility, and basically what he said is pretty offensive to men, not just women. I mean, he's basically saying that she should have known better than to trust men, because if she's drunk, men are going to rape her. Now, there is a very broad church here, which is to say if someone walks around a dark neighbourhood at night wearing an expensive watch or a handbag with money falling out of it, that they're putting themselves in harm's way. And there is an element of truth there, because you don't deserve to be robbed, but you are putting yourself in a scenario where someone who is likely to rob you will do so. And that is a methodology that has some truth to it. The methodology that you shouldn't be allowed to go out and party and get drunk like men do because men will rape you is a little bit further down that track. I would say walking around a dark neighbourhood at night, semi-naked, maybe in the same ballpark as saying that you're putting yourself in harm's way. Being in public and being drunk and being surrounded by other drunk people, you shouldn't be having to monitor yourself in case somebody commits the heinous crime of rape. That is on the person who is a rapist. That isn't on a woman for being drunk. There are certainly avenues you shouldn't go down, not because it's anything to do with your fault, but because predators will seek out these opportunities. But what this idiot, what's his name again? Jeremy Cordo? Yeah, Jeremy Cordo. What this idiot has suggested is that this scenario is like that scenario, where it's you've gone out on a Friday night and you've got paralytically drunk, and you've gone back to some guy's place who you don't know, and he's turned out to be a wrong'un. Now, that is still 100% his fault. And calling someone a silly little girl in that scenario is still garbage. But here, this is like an atomic bomb of garbage. Brittany Higgins wasn't a silly little girl. She was with work colleagues. She was in a safe environment. She was with people she physically worked with, and she worked for the government. She was surrounded by fellow staff. The person that took her away from that environment after plying her with drinks was her superior at work. This isn't some random girl who has gone out in the middle of the night by herself and ended up falling prey to a predator lurking in the shadows. This guy was her superior at work, and she worked for the government. He has offered to take her home in a taxi. I would suggest that you should feel safe in that environment. If a superior is taking you home in a taxi from an environment where other work colleagues have seen you and where you know exactly who this person is, you should probably have every right to feel safe. The offence has occurred in the government's offices, in the government building where you have got security present that you walked past. How is this being a silly little girl? She was at work. She was in a building that had security in a minister's office with a senior member of staff, and you call her a silly little girl for getting drunk? She doesn't have a right to feel safe in a minister's office in a government building with security having logged her name as she walked in the door with another senior member of staff. You utter moron. I cannot believe that, and now this will be the tipping point where it's okay to rubbish her for her behaviour. This isn't a girl going out at night with strangers on a Friday night by herself, getting drunk and getting in trouble. This is a woman with a senior work colleague in the houses of government. So she deserves her bottom pinch because she couldn't trust the senior member of staff not to rape her at work, you idiot.